A janitor saved my life. How a poor office cleaner saved the CEO billionaire's life. The janitor's mop hit my office door at exactly 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night. By 11:52, my entire life had collapsed. But here's what nobody tells you about the moment everything falls apart. Sometimes the person holding the match that burns your world down is the same person trying to save you from the fire. If you're watching right now, I want you to do something for me. Hit the subscribe button right now and turn on your notification bell. Drop a comment. Share with someone who need to hear this today. Because the stories here aren't the ones you'll see on the news. They're the quiet ones, the true ones. The ones that prove that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest waves. Now let me tell you about the moment everything changed. My name is Marcus Chen. I'm 34 years old, and this is the story of how a man I never noticed became the only person who really saw me. I should have noticed he wasn't speaking English at first. Let me take you back to that Tuesday night. Corner office, 47th floor, Silicon Valley floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a city that never stops building the future. That's where I was, CEO of an AI startup called Catalyst Analytics, valued at $800 million. I had a bottle of champagne on my desk, still in the wrapper. I was waiting until midnight to open it because that's when the acquisition documents would be filed. A company called Brenner Technologies was buying us. The number was so big I'd written it down on a Post-it note just to see if it looked real. It did. I was on my laptop reviewing the final pitch deck one more time, not because I needed to, because I couldn't quite believe it was over. 8 years of 16-hour days, 8 years of pitching, pivoting, pretending I had it all figured out, and finally, I'd won. That's when I heard the cart. You know that sound. Wheels that need oil, the gentle rattle of spray bottles and paper towel rolls, the soft percussion of a working person moving through a space where everyone else has gone home. The door opened. I didn't look up. "Roberto, hey, I'm going to be here late tonight. You can skip this office." Then, in a voice that was quiet but somehow filled the entire room, "Mr. Chen, the algorithm is lying." I turned around and saw a man who'd been invisible to me for 3 years. Roberto Vasquez, 64 years old, gray hair, deep lines around his eyes, wearing the navy blue uniform of Prestige Building Services. He'd been cleaning our offices since we moved into this building. I'd probably seen him 200 times. I'd never once asked him his last name. "Roberto, what are you talking about?" He stepped closer. His hands were still on the handle of his cleaning cart, but his eyes were locked on my laptop screen. "The numbers," he said. His English was accented. "Careful. The numbers, it shows them. Not the numbers, it shows the users." My blood went cold. He described code I'd only shown 3 people, all under NDA. "Window 3, Roberto said, pointing at my screen. "Line 847. The if statement that checks user_type. If user_type equals investor or demo, it runs the report_engagement_inflated function. Otherwise, it runs report_engagement_actual. I stood up so fast my chair rolled backward and hit the window. "How the hell do you know that?" Roberto's expression didn't change. "I read your screen, Mr. Chen, every night, for 6 months. You work late. I work late. You leave your code open. I have eyes. You can read code. I have a PhD in computer science from UNAM, Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico. I graduated in 1991. I worked at IBM Research in Guadalajara until 1997. The room tilted slightly. You're a janitor." Then he pulled out his phone and I saw my own face on the screen. Roberto reached into his pocket. For a weird, dislocated second, I thought he was going to pull out a weapon. Instead, he pulled out a phone, an old Android with a cracked screen. He turned it toward me. On the screen, security footage. Black and white timestamp in the corner, the angle was from the hallway camera looking into my office. The date, 3 months ago, the time, 2:47 a.m. On the screen, I watched myself, younger by 90 days but already looking exhausted. I was at my desk typing. talking to myself the way developers do when they're working alone. And then I heard my own voice tinny through the phone speaker. They'll never know the engagement numbers are fake. The investor dashboard pulls from the shadow database. Clean logs, clean audit trail. By the time anyone figures it out, we'll be acquired and it'll be someone else's problem. I felt my knees weaken. Where did you get that? I submitted a request for security footage for my citizenship application. I needed proof of employment, proof I was here on the nights I said I was. They gave me a USB drive with 6 months of footage. He locked the phone and put it back in his pocket. I watch it sometimes to practice my English. I listen to you talk. You use good technical vocabulary. I asked him what he wanted. His answer wasn't money. Okay, my voice came out dry, cracked. Okay, what do you want? How much? Roberto looked at me for a long moment. Then he shook his head. I don't want money, Mr. Chen. Then what? Equity? A job? What? I want you to tell them the truth. I actually laughed. It came out bitter and sharp. Do you understand what you're asking? That's $800 million you're asking me to walk away from. No, Roberto said quietly. I'm asking you not to steal it. The word hung in the air like smoke. Steal. I built this company from nothing, I said. My voice was rising. I didn't steal anything. I worked 16-hour days for 8 years. I earned this. You built something real, Roberto agreed. And then you broke it. And now you're trying to sell the broken thing for the price of the real thing. That is stealing, Mr. Chen. It doesn't matter how hard you worked before you became a thief. He told me why a janitor understood my code better than my investors did. I sat down, not in my chair, on the floor. I just sat down on the carpet of my corner office and put my head in my hands. How? I said. How does a janitor know more about my code than my CTO? Roberto moved his cart to the side. He sat down too, his back against the wall, like we were two kids in a hallway instead of a CEO and a cleaning person in a building worth more than a small country. I told you I was a researcher, computer vision neural networks. I published 14 papers between 1992 and 1997. 3 of them were cited more than 1,000 times. So what happened? His face did something complicated. My daughter got sick, leukemia. I flew back to Mexico City to be with her. My visa was good for 60 days of absence. She was in the hospital for 93 days. He said it simply, like he was describing weather. When I came back to the US, my visa had been canceled. I'd missed the renewal deadline by 33 days. IBM couldn't sponsor me anymore. I had to leave. But you're here now. I came back in 2006, different visa. My wife's family sponsored us. I was 46 years old, too old to start over in tech. Every job wanted someone under 30, someone without a gap in their resume, someone who didn't need explanations. He smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. So I cleaned buildings, and at night when I emptied the trash cans next to desks where people write code, I read their screens. I stay current. I learn the new frameworks. I understand what you're building. He walked to my whiteboard and in 5 minutes found 3 more lies I'd hidden. Roberto stood up. He walked to my whiteboard, picked up a marker. May I? I nodded. He started writing. Function names, database schemas. The architecture of my fraud laid out in blue marker like a lecture diagram. Here, he said, pointing. The dual reporting system. You have 2 versions of the analytics engine. One for internal use, one for external. The external one inflates daily active users by 31%, engagement time by 47%, and retention rate by 23%. He drew an arrow. Here. The investor-facing dashboard pulls from a different database than the user-facing one. The investor database has synthetic data mixed in, fake users, fake sessions, fake clicks. Another arrow. And here, this is clever, you have a log cleaning function that auto-deletes any record of users who were flagged as synthetic. So even if someone audits the logs, they won't find the fake data because it erases itself after 24 hours. He capped the marker, turned to me. You didn't just lie, Mr. Chen. You built a machine that lies for you automatically. I stared at the whiteboard, at my fraud, illustrated with perfect technical accuracy by a man wearing a janitor's uniform. How long until someone finds it? I whispered. SEC investigation? Maybe 2 years. Criminal charges? Maybe 3. Prison? He tilted his head. Maybe 5 to 10, depending on how much money is involved and how many people you hurt. Then he told me about the email he'd already sent. There's something else, Roberto said. Of course there was. I sent a detailed technical analysis to an anonymous email account, Proton Mail, encrypted. The email contains screenshots of your code, breakdowns of the fraud architecture, and a copy of the security footage. My stomach dropped into my shoes. Every week I log into that account and reset a timer. If I don't log in for 14 consecutive days, the account auto-forwards everything to the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Federal Trade Commission, and 3 journalists who cover tech industry fraud. You're blackmailing me. No, Roberto said. I'm protecting myself. When you are invisible for 17 years, Mr. Chen, you learn things. You learn to always have insurance. You learn that people with power will erase you if it's convenient. So you make yourself inconvenient to erase. I told him everything, not because I had to, because someone finally saw me. I don't know why I started talking. Maybe because it was 11:58 p.m. and my brain was shutting down. Maybe because Roberto was the first person in 3 years who'd looked at me and seen what I actually was instead of what I pretended to be. It started small, I said. We had real traction, real users, real growth. But it wasn't fast enough for the VCs. They wanted hockey stick charts. They wanted exponential curves. Roberto listened without interrupting. So I adjusted one number, just one added 3% to our monthly active users, just to make the chart look a little better for the Series A pitch. And it worked. It worked. We raised $12 million. And then we had to show growth on that $12 million, so I adjusted the numbers again and again. And somewhere around year 3, the fake numbers got bigger than the real numbers, and I couldn't go back because going back meant admitting everything. I looked at my hands. I can't remember the last true thing I said in a pitch meeting. He said something that made me realize he'd been watching more than my code. Mr. Chen, Roberto said quietly, you work later than I do. You arrive before security opens the building. You sleep on that couch 3 nights a week. I know because I see the pillow and blanket you hide in the closet. I looked up at him. What are you building, the company or the prison? The question hit me like a physical thing. I lost my career, Roberto continued, because of a date on a piece of paper. 93 days instead of 60, you're losing yours because of numbers on a screen, both invisible chains, both cages we can't see until someone points them out. His solution was so simple I'd somehow never considered it. Here's what you do, Roberto said. Tonight, right now, you call Brenner Technologies. You tell them there are irregularities in the user data. You request a 90-day audit period with full transparency. You let them see everything, the real numbers, the real code, the real company. They'll walk away, the deal will die. Maybe, or maybe they renegotiate. Maybe the company is worth $200 million instead of $800 million. Maybe it's worth $50 million. Maybe it's worth nothing. He shrugged. But you'll sleep. You'll stop building your prison. And maybe you get to keep the one thing you actually care about. Which is? The work. The real work. The innovation that brought you here before you started lying about it. I asked him why he cared. His answer broke something in me. Why? I said. My voice cracked. Why not just send the evidence? Why give me a choice? Roberto was quiet for a moment. Then, 17 years ago, I sat in an immigration office. My daughter had just come out of remission. I had documentation, hospital records, proof of the emergency. The officer looked at one date, one missed deadline. He didn't ask about my daughter, didn't ask about the circumstances, just stamped a form and canceled everything. He looked at me. No conversation, no choice. The system erased me because it could. I won't become the system that erased me, Mr. Chen. I won't take your choice away, even if you're using that choice to hurt yourself. I picked up the phone at 12:14 a.m. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely dial. I stood up, walked to my desk, picked up my phone. The screen lit up 12:14 a.m. David Brenner's personal cell was in my contacts. We'd exchanged numbers during the final negotiations, the way people do when they're about to bet hundreds of millions of dollars on each other. I looked at Roberto. He nodded once. I dialed. It rang 4 times, then, "Marcus, it's after midnight. Is everything?" "There's a problem with the user data." My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. "I need to tell you before we sign." I counted the seconds, 8 of them. "I'm listening." I talked for 11 minutes. Roberto stood by the window watching the parking lot. I told David everything: the dual reporting system, the inflated metrics, the timeline of when it started, the pressure to show growth, the first small lie that became 100 bigger lies. Roberto stood by the window with his back to me, looking out at the city. I couldn't see his face. I don't know if he was proud of me or disappointed that it had taken this long. David didn't interrupt. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, could hear the sound of him walking to another room, a door closing. When I finished, the silence lasted forever. "How much do the real numbers differ?" David finally asked. His voice was flat, professional. "Daily active users are down 31%. Engagement is down 47%. Retention is down 23%. The deal is off, pending a full investigation." He hung up. When I hung up, Roberto was still there. I expected him to leave. He didn't. I set the phone down. My hands were numb. Roberto turned from the window. "You did the right thing," he said. "I just destroyed my company, 8 years of work." "No, you saved yourself. The company was already destroyed, Mr. Chen. You just couldn't see it yet." I sat back down on the floor. Roberto sat across from me, his back against the wall again. We sat there in silence for a long time. 3 months later, the SEC investigation cleared me. Barely. Here's what nobody tells you about confessing. The punishment isn't always prison. The SEC investigated. They concluded that while I'd committed fraud, I'd also voluntarily disclosed before money changed hands and before investors suffered losses, no criminal charges. A fine probation. But the real punishment? Watching my reputation burn. The tech press destroyed me. Fallen founder admits to metrics fraud. Silicon Valley Wunderkind's house of cards collapses. Every blog, every podcast, every Twitter thread. Former friends stopped returning calls. Investors sued me personally. I settled for $40 million, which meant personal bankruptcy, because I didn't actually have $40 million in liquid assets. Lost my house, lost my car, lost my savings. What remained? The core technology and 1 employee. Roberto became my co-founder, not my janitor, my equal partner. "I have a proposal," Roberto said to me one morning in a coffee shop. This was 6 weeks after everything collapsed. I was living in a studio apartment in Oakland, freelancing to pay rent. "I'm listening." "The original algorithm, before you added the fraud, is it still good?" I thought about it. "Yeah, it's brilliant. It's just smaller than investors wanted." "Then let's build the small, brilliant thing." He slid a piece of paper across the table. A business proposal partnership agreement, equity 40% Roberto, 40% Marcus, 20% reserved for future employees. "I have some savings," he said. "Not a lot, but enough to rent an office for 6 months, enough to incorporate. You build the product. I'll handle the architecture and make sure we're not cutting corners." I looked at the paper. At this man who'd destroyed my life and was now offering to rebuild it with me. Why? Because I've spent 17 years watching people build things alone and burn out. I don't want to watch anymore. I want to build. Last week, Roberto did something that made me realize what we'd actually built. That was 2 years ago. Today, our company, we called it Clarity Analytics, which Roberto said was on the nose but honest, has 12 employees and $3 million in annual revenue. We're profitable, small, but profitable. Last week, a young woman came in for an interview, software engineer position. Her resume showed a PhD in machine learning from IIT Bombay, a gap of 4 years, then contract work. The other candidates had more continuous experience. During the debrief, our hiring committee was leaning toward someone else. Roberto looked at her resume again. The gap, it's a visa issue, isn't it? We called her references. It was. She'd lost her H-1B status due to a startup shutdown, spent 4 years fighting to get back, finally made it on an O-1 visa. Roberto hired her on the spot, made her a senior engineer, gave her equity. After she left, I asked him, why? Because we build careers here, Mr. Chen, not just code. Yesterday, David Brenner called, the CEO who was going to acquire us. My phone rang yesterday morning, unknown number. Marcus, it's David Brenner. I stopped walking. I was on my way to the office. Just froze in the middle of the sidewalk. David, hi. I need to tell you something. We acquired a company last year. Different AI startup, grew fast, great metrics. Everyone was excited. Okay. They're under SEC investigation now. Same pattern, inflated metrics, dual reporting systems, fake user data. I closed my eyes. I'm sorry to hear that. You tried to warn me, David said. Not explicitly, but when you confessed, you told me this was an industry-wide problem, that the pressure to show growth creates perverse incentives. I didn't listen. I thought you were just making excuses. I was making excuses. I was also telling the truth. Yeah, he sighed. Are you still building that original algorithm, the real one? He made a new offer, much smaller, much more honest. We are, I said carefully. What's it worth? Real numbers, real metrics, real value. We're at 3 million ARR, growing 40% year over year, profitable clean cap table, no debt. I'd like to make an offer, 45 million. Cash and stock, you and Roberto stay on as CEO and CTO of an independent division. 3-year contracts, full autonomy. I didn't answer immediately. Marcus, you there? Yeah, I'm here. I need to talk to my partner. Of course, take your time. Roberto and I sat in the same office. That night, Roberto and I stayed late at the office. At 11:47 p.m., 45 million, I said. It's a good offer. Much smaller than 800 million. Much more honest than 800 million. I looked at him. What do you think we should do? Roberto smiled. I think we should ask the team. All 12 employees voted. The result wasn't what I expected. We called an all-hands meeting the next morning, laid out the offer, explained what it would mean, financial security, growth, acquisition by a respected company. Then we took a vote, 8-4 against selling. I stared at the hands. Can I ask why? I said to the room. One of our engineers, a woman named Priya, the one Roberto had hired with the visa gap, raised her hand. My last company had free lunch, ping pong tables, and cocaine in the executive bathrooms. I prefer honest and humble. The room laughed. But it wasn't a joke. I called David back. Roberto was on the line too. I called David that afternoon, put him on speaker. Roberto sat across from me. David, it's Marcus. Roberto's here too. Gentlemen, what's the verdict? We're declining the offer. Silence. You're turning down $45 million. Roberto leaned forward. We're building something that can't be bought yet, Mr. Brenner. Maybe later, but not until we understand what it becomes when we're not in a hurry. David was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed. Not mockery, genuine amusement. I respect that, I really do. Call me when you're ready. We will. Keeps me humble, he said. Keeps me seeing what other people don't. You learn the truth about a company at night, Mr. Chen. Papers in the trash, whiteboards not erased, who works late because they love the work and who works late because they're afraid. People ask me about Roberto. They want to know the secret. Here's what people don't understand when I tell them this story. Roberto didn't save my company. The company died. The $800 million valuation, the corner office, the champagne I never opened, all of it burned. What Roberto saved was me. He saved me from prison, from becoming someone I couldn't recognize in the mirror, from building a machine that would have eventually crushed me under its own weight. Today, when people ask about clarity analytics, they want to know the secret to our success. The secret is we measure success differently. We're not the biggest. We're not the fastest growing. We're not going to make anyone a billionaire. But every single person who works here can sleep at night. Last Tuesday, I asked Roberto something I'd been wondering about for 2 years. That email, I said, the one you sent with all the evidence, the dead man switch that would forward to the SEC if you didn't log in, was it real? Roberto smiled. That same quiet smile from the night he confronted me. The email was real. The evidence was real. But there was no automatic forwarding system. I don't know how to set that up. So you were bluffing. I had the evidence, Mr. Chen. I just didn't have the automation, but it didn't matter. Why not? Because you wanted to confess. You wanted someone to see what you'd become and give you permission to stop. I just gave you the excuse. He put his hand on my shoulder. Here's what I learned in 17 years of being invisible. Rich people think poor people want their money. Poor people know rich people want their sleep. I didn't want your millions, Mr. Chen. I wanted you to sleep again. You couldn't, because lies don't let you rest. The janitor knew my secret, but the real secret was this. He saw me when I couldn't see myself. If this story meant something to you, do me a favor. Like this video if you've ever felt trapped by your own success. Share it with someone who's building something real. Comment below where you are watching from and what's one truth you stopped hiding. And subscribe to enjoy every part of the stories.